So I deployed $8,000 into Aerodrome liquidity pools, and today I'm going to be showing you the exact performance of those liquidity pools. And might I say, these are all concentrated liquidity pools, and they're also hosted on VFAT, where I have automated rebalancing happening practically every day at this point. So let's dive right in. The first thing that I want to show you is the pools that I'm currently invested into. So over on the concentrated section on Aerodrome, I'm invested into Ethereum to USDC, currently showing a 2,400% APR, but remember, that's not always going to be accurate. That's assuming that you have a super tight range for your liquidity. I'm also invested into the Ethereum to spec liquidity pool, once again showing a crazy return that it's not holding up to. And then I'm also invested into the Ethereum to Brett liquidity pool, also showing a crazy return that it's not holding up to. So it's important to use third-party tools, whether it's VFAT, whether it's Metrics Finance, to actually make sure that these returns are accurate. I will say Metrics Finance is going to be the best bet when it comes to actually making sure that these returns are accurate. The main reason why is because you can enter your range and you can completely customize the amount of data that you are taking into account when you're simulating the actual return. So I would just select Aerodrome on the base network, and then when I select ETH to USDC, I would pull it up, and from here I can start to adjust my range. So as you can see off the bat, with the range of plus 33% minus 20%, I'm getting roughly a 50% APR. Now if I were to go a lot narrower and go to a lot tighter of a range, like 3,500 as my max price, and then maybe I put my min price all the way up here at around 2,900, as you can see that climbs up to about 125%. But it all depends on where the current price is compared to overall liquidity in the pool, as well as how the volume and the rewards are doing. Volume doesn't play as much of a factor in Aerodrome liquidity pools because you're being paid out in Aero incentives. But as I mentioned, these are Aerodrome liquidity pools. They're just being hosted over on VFAT, and VFAT is automatically harvesting my rewards for me, but also rebalancing these pools. So I'm going to briefly describe my current VFAT strategy. I did already break it down in a video, but basically I have these automated rebalances. So on ETH to USDC, my range is -4 plus 4%. Now the thing that I don't like about VFAT is it does wait for you to go out of range, or you can have a buffer to go even further out of range before it ends up rebalancing your position. I would prefer to rebalance when I have about 75 or 80% of one asset. Basically that would minimize some of the divergence loss, and that's something that I could do over on Aperture, but currently Aperture does not support Aerodrome positions. But whenever I do rebalance, I end up selling my Aero tokens for USDC, so I harvest those in USDC. That way I can build a stash of USDC in my wallet, and I can eventually start to yield farm with that USDC, or I could start to cash that out into my actual bank account if I want to. There's a lot of different things that I could do there. Now do keep in mind, you don't want to rebalance too often because VFAT does charge a 0.01% rebalance fee. So that's on your entire position basically. It is one of the lowest fees in the market, I will say that, but at the same time, it's 0.01% and you're consistently giving up some of your capital every time you rebalance, even if that rebalance wasn't necessarily needed. So you don't want to just do a -1 +1 range. You do want to go with the range that actually works and actually makes sense for the strategy. And keep in mind, this is my first test with VFAT. I plan to deploy up to $30,000 into VFAT, and if you guys want to stay tuned for that journey, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, notifications turned on. But I'm actually rebalancing my portfolio today after this video, and I am going to be playing around with the different min and max price and adjusting this accordingly depending on how the market is currently, basically, because it's important to realize that your range is going to need to be different depending on how the market is moving. Like for example, ETH to spec was moving sideways for a very long time. I literally only rebalanced like once in here, but then over time spec started to go down and spec started to fall, all the way into the point where spec fell roughly 17% today. So this position is down a decent amount of money. Well, obviously I'm going to need a broader range to make up for that. But over on Ethereum to spec, I was using -6 plus 4, and once again harvesting into USDC, and it would just rebalance as soon as I go out of range. Now with that being said, guys, if you are interested in taking your Aerodrome crypto passive income to the next level, I just released a $47 Aerodrome mini course that covers everything you need to know about using Aerodrome, but also DeFi Finance, Metrics Finance, and VFAT. And new users of Metrics Finance will also get 30 days of the pro version for free bundled into that price. So you're getting $87 of value just for $47, and that link will be down below in the description if you want to check it out. And then over here on ETH Brett, I was using -4 plus 2. This one probably was a little tight, but so far this one has done pretty decent as well, also harvesting into USDC. So to dive into the performance side of things, I am tracking this stuff over on my tracking sheet right now. So basically you could see I deployed about 79.50 across all of these different positions, and I currently have 74.31. So with that being said, I lost $520 from the price going down, but I made $380 from earnings. Keep in mind, these earnings, the majority of them have already been sold into USDC because each rebalance it's automatically selling into USDC, and that puts me at a negative $140 profit. What I want to pay attention to is this impermanent loss or divergence loss, whatever you want to call it. This is negative $352. That means that compared to somebody that was holding in the market, if you were holding in the market, you'd have roughly 77.80 compared to 79.50. So that's a hefty amount of impermanent loss right there, right? Now do keep in mind that the earnings makes up for all of that impermanent loss, loss, but this is also not a good ratio to have. So what exactly went wrong here? Well, number one, the Brett impermanent loss is too high. So that tells me I probably need to do a broader range with Brett because it's being rebounds too often and it's not allowing itself room to perform. So going with a broader range on Brett, yes, it's going to reduce the 270% APR that I'm getting right here, but at the same time, it will help these earnings be higher than that impermanent loss. Now, next off, we have Ethereum to spec. This one over here, $160 of impermanent loss and $112 of earnings. This was actually the best performing position until spec fell roughly 17% today. And then since it fell 17% today, it did end up locking in a decent amount of impermanent loss, and that's not enough to combat earnings. So what does that also tell me? We need a broader range on spec, or we need to rethink our overall spec strategy. And this is actually one that I'm being careful with because I really want to deploy another $8,000 to $10,000 of Ethereum and spec into this Ethereum and spec liquidity pool, considering that it's currently just sitting in the Uniswap liquidity pool, not doing 280%, but doing about 100% with just a slightly broader range. And then the best performing pool is Ethereum to USDC. This has $125 of impermanent loss, $215 of earnings, so it's the real winner right here, and it's only down $150 from the price falling. So that's actually putting me at a $70 profit. So when you put all these together, the ones that I've been together in for a week, my actual realized but annualized APR is about 244%. Remember, that is based off of the earnings basically, and it's multiplied on a 365 day. Now, with that being said, I'm currently down 1.77% across all these positions, which is very solid, but keep in mind, if I had a proper strategy and a better strategy in place for something like Ethereum to Brett and Ethereum to spec, then this would be performing better, and I want to say it would have only been down roughly 0.5% or maybe even up 1 or 2%. So that's a consideration there, and as I mentioned in my first video, I'm testing things out. I'm playing around with it. I've never used VFAT before. Yes, I've used automation tools like Aperture before, but typically I'm rebalancing over here, and I have a more intricate strategy that I'm able to run over on Aperture, but unfortunately I'm not able to run it over on VFAT. So I do have to adapt to that, and I do have to kind of take that in mind and take that into consideration when adjusting these positions. So to talk about if I'm happy with the performance so far, my honest answer is yes, I am happy with the performance, but I know it can be better, and I do think that this was a solid test to run with about $8,000, and I'm glad that I didn't just deploy my initial $30,000 right into these positions, but rather I scaled in.